The council chamber dimmed to near darkness as the final delegates took their seats. No one spoke. No one needed to. Every being in that room had already read the priority seal stamped across the transmission. Level Omega. Civilizational threat. At the center of the chamber, a single figure stepped forward. Ambassador Velter. His movements were precise, controlled, but there was something unusual in the way his hands lingered over the console. Hesitation. That alone was enough to unsettle the chamber. Velter did not hesitate. Ever. The air above the circular table flickered, then came alive with a projection of a distant star system. A small blue planet rotated slowly at its center, quiet, unremarkable, almost fragile. For a moment, it looked like nothing. Just another developing world. Just another species waiting to be catalogued, classified, and eventually surpassed. Velter finally spoke. His voice was steady, but it carried a weight none of them had heard before. We believed we understood intelligence. A pause. The image zoomed closer to the planet. Cloud systems, oceans, continents. Peaceful. Deceptively so. We believed technological advancement followed rules, patterns, limits. Another pause. Longer this time. Several council members shifted in their seats. Something was wrong. They could feel it now. Velter's gaze moved slowly across the chamber, meeting each of them, not as a presenter, but as a witness. We were wrong. The projection changed instantly. The peaceful planet vanished. In its place appeared something crude. Violent. Unrefined. A metal construct, angular, uneven, covered in layered plating as if it had been rebuilt over and over again. It didn't glide. It endured. 3 months ago, this species achieved faster-than-light capability. A ripple of unease moved through the chamber. That alone should have been impossible. But Velter wasn't finished. His next words landed heavier. Slower. They did not follow the path every intelligent species has taken before them. The image zoomed further, exposing scars across the vessel's hull. Burn marks. Reinforced sections. Structural inconsistencies. Evidence of failure. Repeated failure. And survival. They built it, by trial, error. A flicker. Another image. The same design, earlier iteration. Exploding. Then another. And another. Each failure, more violent than the last. And persistence. Silence filled the chamber. Not the calm kind. The kind that comes when something fundamental breaks. Velter's final words in the darkness carried something far worse than fear. Understanding. What we are witnessing is not technological evolution. The projection froze. A burning human engine mid-detonation. Still running. Still functioning. It is something else. A pause. Then. Something that does not obey limits. The projection stabilized. The violent imagery faded, replaced once again by the small blue planet, calm, distant, almost insignificant against the vastness of space. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Council member Thoren leaned forward, her expression sharpening as she studied the image. This is the threat. There was skepticism in her voice. Controlled, but unmistakable. A pre-unified species on a mid-tier biosphere with unstable atmospheric patterns. Another council member gave a low, dismissive exhale. Their world is barely optimized for advanced development. A third added. Their oceans are chemically imbalanced. Their tectonic activity is erratic. Their climate fluctuates unpredictably. Thorin's gaze narrowed. A species that evolves under such chaotic environmental conditions cannot produce stable technological progress. A pause. Then, colder. At best, they are inefficient imitators. Several members nodded. The tension in the room began to shift, fear softening into something more familiar. Superiority. Velter didn't interrupt. He let them speak. Let them rebuild their confidence. Because he knew what came next. Another council member, Zareth, gestured toward the earlier image of the human vessel now displayed beside the planet. And this is their engineering. The crude ship rotated slowly in the projection. Uneven plating. Exposed structural reinforcements. No symmetry. No elegance. It looked wrong. There is no design harmony, Zareth continued. No energy optimization. No structural refinement. She tilted her head slightly. It appears assembled, not engineered. A few quiet chuckles spread through the chamber. Improvised construction at best, someone added. Salvage tier fabrication. Elder Quindar, ancient and measured, finally spoke, his voice carrying quiet authority. Perhaps they acquired fragments of advanced technology. That idea settled quickly. Comfortably. Yes, Thoren agreed. That would explain the discrepancy. She gestured toward the projection. Primitive species often stumble upon relic systems. With enough trial and error, even lesser intelligences can activate what they do not understand. Another voice followed, which would also explain the instability of their vessels. More agreement. The narrative was forming now. Safe. Predictable. They are not innovators, Zareth concluded. They are imitators playing with forces beyond their comprehension. For a moment, it almost sounded convincing. Velta finally moved. Just a single step forward. And the room quieted instantly. He adjusted the projection. The crude human vessel remained on one side. But now, another image appeared beside it. A Zephyrian cruiser. Smooth. Symmetrical. Perfect. A masterpiece of refined engineering. The contrast was absolute. Elegant perfection. Versus chaotic construction. Velta let the comparison linger. Let them feel validated. Let them believe they understood. Then, very quietly, he spoke. We considered that possibility. The tone shifted. Subtle. But enough. We assumed they had discovered external technology. That they were replicating fragments without comprehension. He paused. The chamber leaned in, just slightly. So we investigated. The projection changed again. Now, timestamps. Development logs. Human technological progression. Rapid. Compressed. Impossible. Ships evolving across iterations. Not centuries. But years. Then. Decades. Council member Thoren frowned. These timelines. Zaretha's voice dropped. They cannot be accurate. Velta didn't look at them. His eyes remained on the projection. We verified them across multiple observation points. A new image appeared. Human engineers. Inside their own machine. Working. While it was active. While it was unstable. While it was dangerous. Silence returned. But this time, it wasn't comfortable. Velta spoke again. And now, there was no room for dismissal. They did not find this technology. A beat. They built it. No one spoke. No one moved. Because something had just shifted. And they all felt it. Velta's final line in this phase landed like a crack forming beneath certainty. And if you still believe they are primitive. He turned, finally meeting their eyes. Then you have misunderstood the nature of the threat entirely. No one spoke. The chamber, once filled with quiet confidence, now held something far less stable. Doubt. Elder Quindar leaned forward slowly, his ancient eyes narrowing as he studied the projections again, this time not as artifacts, but as evidence. Run the sequence again. Velta complied. The images replayed, human vessels evolving through iteration after iteration. Not refined. Not perfected. But improved. Each version carried visible flaws. Scars. Reinforcements layered over previous failures. And yet, each one performed better than the last. Quindar's voice dropped. Quieter now. There is no optimization curve. A pause. No standardization cycle. Thoren frowned. That's impossible. Without standardization, progress collapses into inefficiency. It should, Quindar replied. Another image appeared, human engineers surrounding a damaged engine core. The machinery was unstable, sparking, partially exposed. And they were inside it, working, adjusting components while it was still active. Zareth recoiled slightly. Why would they not shut it down first? Velta answered without hesitation. Because shutting it down would slow them. That answer lingered. Uncomfortable. Thorin's voice sharpened. That is not efficiency. That is recklessness. Yes, Velta said. A bit. It is. The projection shifted again. A new dataset. Failure records. Explosions. Catastrophic breakdowns. Systems collapsing under stress. One after another. Rapid. Relentless. The chamber watched in silence as iteration after iteration ended in destruction, only to be followed immediately by another attempt. Quindar spoke again, more slowly this time. What are their casualty rates? Velta paused. And for the first time, that hesitation returned. Lower than expected. A ripple of confusion spread. Zareth leaned forward. Define lower. Statistically insignificant relative to their failure frequency. Silence. That didn't make sense. It couldn't make sense. Thorin's voice dropped, now edged with something new. Then their systems are not failing as often as it appears. They are, Velta replied. Then their survival protocols must be advanced. Another pause. They are not. Now. Real unease. Quindar's fingers tightened slightly against the table. Explain. The projection zoomed in on a human workspace. No advanced shielding. No layered containment systems. No predictive stabilization fields. Just reinforced structures. And manual controls. Everywhere. They design for failure, Velta said. The words landed differently this time. He continued. Every system includes redundant pathways, manual overrides, physical access points. Another image. A control panel. Then another. And another. Each one layered with backup mechanisms. Levers. Switches. Emergency bypasses. Crude. But effective. They assume their systems will break, Velta said. So they ensure they can still operate them when they do. Zareth shook her head slowly. That is, inefficient design. Yes, Velta agreed. A bit. Then. And yet it works. The chamber fell silent again. But now. The silence had changed. This wasn't confusion anymore. This was the beginning of something else. A realization forming. But not yet fully understood. Thorin spoke carefully. Even if what you're suggesting is accurate, it does not explain their rate of advancement. Velta nodded. Correct. He adjusted the display again. Now, two systems appeared side by side. Zephyrian technology. Elegant. Predictable. Perfectly modeled. And human technology. Chaotic. Irregular. Unstable. But the performance metrics told a different story. The gap was shrinking. Rapidly. Too rapidly. Quindar's voice dropped to a near whisper. Their models are wrong. He studied the human data again. But their results are correct. No one responded. Because that was the contradiction. The thing that shouldn't exist. The thing that couldn't exist. Zareth finally said it. They are bypassing theory. Velta looked at her. Yes. Thorin frowned deeply. That is not possible. Without theoretical alignment, systems collapse under complexity. Ours would, Velta said. Another pause. Then, slowly, deliberately, he delivered the line that shifted everything. Theirs don't. The projection changed one more time. A human engineer stood in front of a partially dismantled engine, tools in hand, making adjustments without any visible calculation interface. No predictive modeling. No simulation overlay. Just observation. And action. They do not wait to understand a system before they use it, Velta continued. They use it, and then learn from what happens. Quindar leaned back slightly. Not relaxed. But recalibrating. Trial and error. At scale, Velta confirmed. Another silence. He let it stretch. Let it settle. Because now, they were beginning to see it. Not as primitive. Not as inefficient. But as something else entirely. Velta's final words in this phase were quiet. But they carried more weight than anything before them. We believed intelligence required precision. A pause. But what if it doesn't? The projection dimmed slightly. The human engineer continued working inside a live system. Unafraid. Uncertain. Unstoppable. What if, Velta said, it only requires adaptation? Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. And for the first time, no one in the chamber tried to argue. The chamber remained still. Not the stillness of confidence, but of recalculation. They were no longer dismissing the data. They were trying to understand it. And that, Velta knew, was far more dangerous. Elder Quindar broke the silence. You have shown us their methods. His voice was slower now. Measured. You have shown us their inconsistencies, their inefficiencies, their contradictions. A pause. His eyes lifted toward Velta. But you have not yet answered the most important question. The chamber seemed to lean in with him. What are they? Velta didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned back to the projection. For a moment, nothing changed. Then, a new sequence began. Not ships. Not schematics. Footage. Raw observation logs. A human stood inside a partially exposed engine chamber. The system was active. Unstable. Energy arcing across open components. Warning signals flashing violently. And the human was inside it. Working. Adjusting. Reaching into the core of something that should have already been shut down. Thorin's voice cut through the silence. Why is it still operational? Because they chose not to deactivate it, Velta replied. Zareth leaned forward, disbelief clear in her tone. That environment is lethal. Yes. Then why are they still inside it? Velta didn't look away from the projection. Because stopping would slow them down. Silence. The footage continued. Another angle. Two more humans now. One holding a panel in place while the other rewired a sparking conduit. No hesitation. No visible fear. Only focus. Quindar spoke quietly. Show me their safety protocols. Velta paused. Then, another sequence appeared. Medical logs. Incident reports. Injury statistics. Then, survival rates. Zaretha's voice faltered slightly. These numbers. Thorin leaned in closer. They should not be alive. Agreed, Velta said. A beat. But they are. The projection shifted again. Now, human training environments. Simulations. Except, they weren't simulations. They were real systems. Failing systems. Deliberately pushed beyond safe limits. Humans learning by operating them at the edge of collapse. Quindar's expression darkened. They expose themselves to failure, intentionally. Yes. Another pause. Then Quindar asked the question that mattered. Why? Velta finally turned to face them. Fully. For the first time since the briefing began. Because they expect it. That answer didn't settle. It spread. Slowly. Uncomfortably. Thorin shook her head. No species expects failure as a baseline. Failure is something to be minimized, avoided, engineered out. That is how we think, Velta said. A beat. Then. It is not how they think. The projection changed again. A new dataset appeared. Human design frameworks. Layered. Messy. Filled with redundancies. Backup systems stacked on top of backup systems. Manual overrides integrated into every automated function. Emergency controls accessible from multiple points. Zareth stared at it. This is excessive. Yes. Inefficient. Yes. Unnecessary. Velta held her gaze. No. Silence. Heavy now. Because something had just shifted again. Not in the data. but in how they were seeing it. Velter stepped closer to the center of the chamber. His voice dropped. Lower. Sharper. They do not build systems to operate under ideal conditions. The projection zoomed in. Highlighted failure points. Then, backup pathways activating. Instantly. Automatically. They build systems that assume something will go wrong. Another image. A human ship under extreme stress. Sections failing. But others compensating. Holding. Adapting. They expect failure. A pause. Then. And they prepare for it. The chamber was completely silent now. No interruptions. No objections. Because now, they were beginning to understand. But Velter wasn't finished. Not yet. He brought up one final sequence. A comparison. Zephyrian engineering philosophy. Perfection. Precision. Prevention of error. Next to it. Human engineering philosophy. Survival. Adaptation. Iteration. We design systems that do not fail, Velter said. A beat. They design systems that survive failure. The difference hung in the air. Simple. Obvious. Terrifying. Quindar spoke again, but this time, there was something new in his voice. Not authority. Recognition. That would allow them to take risks we cannot. Yes. To push systems beyond safe limits. Yes. To advance faster. Velter finished it for him. Yes. Another silence. But this one felt final. Because now they saw it. Clearly. Velter delivered the line that defined everything. They do not optimize systems. A pause. Then. They challenge limits. The projection shifted one last time. Human engineers working. Not carefully. Not cautiously. But relentlessly. Testing. Breaking. Rebuilding. Improving. Over and over again. Where we seek stability. Velter said quietly. They seek progress. A final pause. Then. The truth. The one thing none of them could ignore anymore. And progress, he said, does not require perfection. The chamber sat in absolute silence. Because now, the fear had changed. It was no longer about what humans were doing. It was about what they could become. And for the first time, no one in that room believed they were primitive. No one challenged him now. Not after that. The room had crossed a threshold, quietly, but completely. They were no longer debating whether humans were dangerous. They were waiting to learn how dangerous. Velter let the silence stretch just long enough, then moved. 3 weeks ago, he began, we detected a human vessel entering the outer perimeter of our monitored space. The projection shifted. A dark region of space appeared, marked with faint Zephyrian survey routes. Then, a signal. Human. Approaching. We did not intercept, Velter continued. At that time, they were still considered irrelevant. A few council members shifted slightly at that word. Irrelevant. It no longer felt accurate. The image zoomed in. A small automated research drone drifted near an asteroid belt. Standard Zephyrian design. Elegant. Efficient. Self-contained. This unit, Velter said, was conducting a routine mineral analysis. Another signal appeared. The human ship. Crude. Uneven. Scarred. It approached without hesitation. No formal contact request. No scanning clearance. No communication. It simply moved closer. Though Wren frowned. Why were they not warned off? Because, Velter said calmly, we did not consider them capable of doing anything significant. That answer hung heavier than intended. The projection continued. The human vessel aligned with the drone. A brief pause. Then, the drone vanished. Zaretha's voice sharpened. They destroyed it. No. Velter zoomed the timeline forward. 6 hours. Nothing. Then, a signal. The drone reappeared. Released back into its original trajectory. The chamber leaned in. Something was wrong. Very wrong. We retrieved the unit, Velta said quietly. The projection split into two images. Left, original drone schematics. Right, post-contact analysis. At first glance, they looked identical. Then, the differences began to highlight. Small changes, subtle modifications, system refinements, efficiency gains, power redistribution, sensor amplification. Zaretha's voice dropped. They altered it. Yes. Quinda's eyes narrowed. How long did they have access to it? 6 hours. Silence. No reaction. Because the number hadn't processed yet. Then. It did. Though Ren spoke first. That is not enough time to disassemble, analyze, and reconstruct an unfamiliar system. Agreed, Velta said. A beat. And yet, they did. The projection zoomed further. Now showing internal comparisons. Every modification highlighted. Not random. Not experimental. Deliberate. Targeted. Zareth leaned forward slowly. These changes. Her voice tightened. They are improvements. Yes. Not approximations. Correct. Not adaptations. No. A pause. Then. Improvements. The word settled heavily. Because it meant only one thing. They hadn't guessed. They had understood. Completely. Quindar spoke, quieter than before. What happened to the original design parameters? Velta brought up performance metrics. The room dimmed further as the numbers appeared. Efficiency. Increased. Power consumption. Reduced. Sensor resolution. Enhanced beyond original thresholds. Thorin's voice barely rose above a whisper. They optimized it. A beat. In hours. Velta nodded. But he wasn't finished. There was also a message. The projection shifted again. Text appeared. Simple. Unformatted. Unencrypted. Thanks for letting us take a look. We made a few improvements. Hope you don't mind. Human Engineering Team 7. No one spoke. Because no one knew how to process that. Zareth finally broke. They modified classified technology. Her voice sharpened. And returned it. Yes. Without permission. Yes. Without understanding the implications. Velta looked at her. And for the first time, there was something close to certainty in his tone. No. A pause. Then. They understood exactly what they were doing. Silence. Deep. Unsettling. Because this wasn't recklessness. This wasn't ignorance. This was something far more dangerous. Confidence. Velta stepped closer to the projection. Another layer of analysis appeared. Hidden systems. New additions. Ones not present in the original design. Quinda's eyes narrowed. What are those? Additional modifications, Velta said. Explain. The system zoomed in, revealing newly integrated components. Redundant pathways. Manual overrides. Emergency fallback controls. Zaretha's voice tightened. Why would they add these? Because, Velta said, they assumed the system would fail. Another pause. Then. Something else appeared. Unidentified code. Embedded deep within the system. Not part of Zephyrian architecture. Though Ren leaned forward sharply. What is that? Velta didn't answer immediately. He enlarged it. Ran the analysis. The chamber waited. Because now. They expected something worse. And they were right. We are still determining its full function, Velta said. A beat. But preliminary analysis suggests. He hesitated. Just slightly. Then. It improves itself. Silence. Absolute. Because that. Should not exist. Quindar spoke slowly. A self-optimizing subsystem, integrated into our design. Yes. Without destabilizing the system. Yes. Another pause. Longer this time. Then. Quindar finished the thought none of them wanted to say out loud. And they did this in 6 hours. Velter didn't respond. He didn't need to. The answer was already there. Burned into the data. Zareth leaned back slightly. Not relaxed, but distancing herself from the realization forming in front of her. This is not reverse engineering. A beat. Then. This is comprehension. Velter nodded once. Complete comprehension. The projection dimmed slightly, but one final image remained. The modified drone. Now operating beyond its original limits. Stable. Efficient. Better. They did not copy our technology, Velter said quietly. A pause. Then. The line that shifted the room completely. They understood it. Another beat. And then made it better. No one spoke. Because now. The truth was unavoidable. This wasn't a species catching up. This wasn't a species learning. This was a species accelerating. And worse. They weren't slowing down. Velter's final words in this phase were almost calm. But they carried something far more dangerous than fear. Certainty. And if this is what they can do with a single drone. A pause. Then. Imagine what happens when they get access to something more. Silence. Heavy. Because now. They weren't wondering if humans were a threat. They were wondering how long they had left before it was too late. The chamber did not recover. Not after that. The data was no longer theoretical. It wasn't projection. It wasn't speculation. It was evidence. And evidence was far more difficult to dismiss. Elder Quindar sat back slowly, his gaze fixed on the modified drone still hovering in the projection. They did not hesitate. His voice was quiet now. Measured. No prolonged analysis, no observational delay, no containment protocol. A pause. They acted immediately. Velter nodded. Yes. Thoren folded her arms, but the confidence from earlier was gone. Then they are impulsive. No, Velter said. A beat. They are decisive. That distinction mattered. More than anyone in the room wanted it to. Zareth spoke next. Even so, their approach lacks discipline. She gestured toward the human modifications, rough, layered, inelegant. This is not refined engineering. It is reactive. Correct, Velter said. Then it should fail. A pause. Then. It doesn't. Silence. Again. But this silence felt different. Heavier. Because now. They were running out of explanations. Velter stepped forward, bringing up a new set of projections. Not ships. Not drones. But design schematics. Hundreds of them. Human systems. Layered. Messy. Overlapping. Nothing aligned to standard models. Nothing optimized for elegance. And yet, everything connected. We attempted to map their engineering philosophy, Velter said. We expected inconsistency. The projection shifted. Lines began to connect. Patterns forming where none should exist. Instead, we found something else. Quindar leaned forward again. What did you find? Velter didn't answer immediately. He zoomed in on a single system. A human propulsion core. Crude. Overbuilt. Reinforced in multiple places. Backup systems branching in every direction. Manual controls embedded everywhere. They do not design for success, Velter said. A pause. Then. They design for survival. The words settled into the chamber like gravity. Unavoidable. Zareth frowned. Explain. Velter expanded the schematic. Highlighted stress points. Failure zones. Then. The response pathways. Automatic reroutes. Manual overrides. Emergency bypasses. Every system assumes failure, he said. Every function assumes disruption. Every component assumes it will eventually break. Thoren shook her head slowly. That level of redundancy would reduce efficiency across all operations. Yes. It would increase resource consumption. Yes. It would introduce instability in system balance. Velta met her gaze. Yes. A pause. Then. And yet, it allows them to keep operating when everything goes wrong. Silence. Because now, they were starting to see it. Not as inefficiency, but as advantage. Quindar spoke again, voice quieter than before. They are not preventing failure. A beat. They are adapting to it. Exactly. Velta shifted the projection again, now showing multiple human systems under stress. Damage spreading, but systems compensating instantly. Manual control taking over where automation failed. Backup pathways activating without delay. Where we shut systems down to protect them, Velta said, they keep them running to push them further. Another image. A human engineer overriding an automated shutdown, forcing the system to continue operating beyond safe thresholds. Zaretha's voice tightened. That should result in catastrophic loss. It often does. A pause. Then. And they learn from it. That answer landed harder than anything before. Because it wasn't defensive. It wasn't corrective. It was intentional. Though Ren spoke carefully now. They accept loss as part of progress. Yes. They accept failure as part of advancement. Yes. A longer pause. Then. They expect it. The chamber went still again. Because that changed everything. Velta brought up another layer of analysis. Human design annotations. Notes. Comments. Not formal. Not structured. But revealing. Highlighted phrases appeared. If this breaks, reroute here. Backup for backup system. Manual override in case automation fails. Test under overload conditions. Zareth stared at the data. They assume misuse. Yes. They assume error. Yes. They assume incompetence. Velta shook his head slightly. No. A beat. Then. They assume unpredictability. That distinction hit harder. Because unpredictability could not be controlled. Quindar's voice lowered. Then their systems are not designed for ideal users. Correct. They are designed for imperfect ones. Yes. Another silence. But now, it wasn't confusion. It was realization. Slow. Unavoidable. Velta stepped closer to the center. His voice dropped further. More focused. More precise. They do not build systems that require perfection. A pause. Then. They build systems that tolerate imperfection. The projection shifted again. Now. A comparison. Zephyrian system failure. Shutdown. Containment. Isolation. Next to it. Human system failure. Adaptation. Rerouting. Continued operation. We protect our systems from failure, Velta said. A beat. They protect their systems from stopping. That line changed the room. Because it revealed something deeper. Not just how humans build. But why? Zareth spoke, quieter now. That would allow them to operate under conditions we would consider unacceptable. Yes. To push beyond safe limits. Yes. To continue functioning when systems should collapse. Yes. Quindar finished it. To advance, faster. Velta nodded. Yes. Another projection. This time. Timeline comparisons. Zephyrian development curves. Smooth. Gradual. Controlled. Next to them. Human progression. Erratic. Violent. Unstable. But rising. Faster. Far faster. They do not follow linear progression, Velta said. They spike. The graph surged upward. Sharp increases following failure events. Breakthroughs triggered by collapse. Improvement driven by instability. Thorin's voice was barely above a whisper now. They turn failure into acceleration. Exactly. The chamber fell silent again. But this silence felt different. Heavier. More final. Because now, they weren't just observing humans. They were beginning to understand them. And that was far more dangerous. Velta delivered the final line of this phase slowly, deliberately, so there would be no misunderstanding. We believed intelligence required control. A pause. Then. But they do not seek control. Another beat. They seek progress. The projection dimmed, leaving only one image behind. A human system. Damaged. Overloaded. Still running. Still adapting. Still improving. And progress, Velta said quietly, does not wait for perfection. Silence. Absolute. Because now, the truth was clear. Humans weren't dangerous because they were advanced. They were dangerous because they didn't need to be. No one argued anymore. There was nothing left to argue. The question was no longer what humans are. It was how fast they were becoming something worse. Velta let the silence settle one last time, then shifted the projection. The chamber darkened further. A map appeared. Zephyrian space. Trade routes. Research zones. Outer monitoring sectors. Then, new markers began to appear. Red. 1. Then 3. Then, dozens. Though Ren leaned forward immediately. What am I looking at? Confirmed human activity, Velta said. The markers pulsed. Not randomly. Strategically. Zaretha's voice tightened. These are not exploratory paths. She traced one line across the map. They are following our routes. Yes. Another line appeared. Then another. Each one intersecting critical infrastructure. Supply chains. Survey zones. Observation points. Quindar spoke quietly. They are not exploring blindly. A pause. They are mapping us. Velta didn't respond. He didn't need to. The pattern was already visible. And it was precise. Too precise. The projection zoomed in on one of the red markers. A human vessel. Small. Unrefined. Scanning. Not with a single system. But with many. Layered. Simultaneous. The data stream expanded. Radio waves. Thermal imaging. Gravitational fluctuations. Magnetic resonance. Quantum field sampling. All at once. Zareth frowned. This is inefficient. Yes. Redundant. Yes. A beat. Then. But effective. The scan results appeared. Detailed. Far more detailed than they should have been. Internal structures. Energy flows. Even shield harmonics. Partially mapped. Thorin's voice dropped. They are bypassing standard detection limits. Yes. Without specialized scanning arrays. Yes. Quindar finished the thought. Because they are not using standard methods. Velta nodded. They use everything. Another pause. Then. At once. The chamber absorbed that. Because it aligned with everything else. Humans didn't optimize. They overwhelmed. Velta zoomed the timeline forward. Weeks passing. More markers appearing. More scans. More movement. Then. A new layer appeared. Yellow indicators. Zareth stiffened. What are those? Velta hesitated. Just slightly. Then answered. Unauthorized modifications. The room went still again. The projection isolated one instance. A Zephyrian relay buoy. Standard. Secure. Untouched. Officially. Then. The comparison. Before. After. Tiny changes. Almost invisible. But present. Quindar's voice dropped dangerously low. Explain. Velta brought up the analysis. The unit's efficiency increased by 3.7%. Without authorization. Yes. Without system logs. Yes. A pause. Then. Without detection. Silence. Heavy. Because now. It wasn't just observation. It wasn't just learning. It was interference. Zareth spoke, slower now. They accessed secured infrastructure. Yes. Modified it. Yes. Improved it. Velta met her gaze. Yes. Another pause. Then, the realization. And we didn't notice. That landed harder than anything before. Because it meant one thing. They weren't just behind. They were already being studied. Altered. Understood. Thorin's voice tightened. How many systems have been affected? Velta expanded the map. More yellow markers appeared. Then more. Then. Too many. We are still calculating the full extent. Quindar leaned forward again. But this time. His posture had changed. Less authority. More urgency. How long? Velta didn't hesitate this time. Based on current progression rates. The projection shifted to predictive modeling. Growth curves. Acceleration patterns. Human development, rising sharply. 18 months, Velta said. A pause. Then. To match our current capabilities. The chamber didn't react. Not immediately. Because the number hadn't fully registered yet. Then. It did. Zareth spoke first. That is not possible. It is happening. Thorin's voice followed. Our development cycles take centuries. Theirs do not. Another pause. Then. Velta delivered the second number. The one that mattered more. 2 years. A beat. Then. To surpass us. Silence. Absolute. Because that. Was extinction. Not physical. But something arguably worse. Obsolescence. Quindar's voice was barely controlled now. What assumptions is this model based on? Their current rate of iteration, Velta said. Their demonstrated ability to reverse engineer, and their pattern of rapid adaptation following exposure to new systems. A pause. Then. And the fact that they are already doing it. The projection shifted one final time. The modified drone. The altered relay. The scanned vessels. All connected. All part of the same pattern. Learning. Improving. Accelerating. Thorin leaned back slightly. Not in dismissal. But in realization. We are not observing their development. A beat. Then. We are fueling it. No one responded. Because it was true. Every encounter. Every scan. Every interaction. Was giving them more. More data. More understanding. More advantage. Zareth spoke next. Quieter than before. Then isolation is no longer a defensive measure. A pause. Then. It is too late. Velta didn't argue. He simply stepped forward one last time. And delivered the line that sealed the phase. They are not trying to catch up to us. A pause. Then. They are using us to move faster. The projection dimmed. Leaving only the map behind. Red markers spreading. Yellow markers growing. Lines connecting. A system forming. Uncontrolled. Uncontainable. And accelerating. Silence filled the chamber. Because now. They finally understood the real threat. Not what humans were. Not what they had built. But what they were becoming. And how quickly it was happening. The chamber did not erupt. It didn't fracture into debate or panic. That would have been easier. Instead. It settled into something far more dangerous. Agreement. Quiet. Cold. Unavoidable. Elder Quindar rose slowly from his seat. No one interrupted him. No one questioned him. Because for the first time in Zephyrian history, they were not deciding policy. They were reacting to a threat they did not control. We will proceed with containment. His voice carried across the chamber, steady, but stripped of its earlier certainty. All external exposure is to be reduced immediately. A gesture. The projection shifted again. Zephyrian vessels. Infrastructure. Trade networks. All highlighted. Every system that can be observed. A pause. Then. Will be concealed. Thorin nodded, already processing. Class 7 stealth barriers. Approved. Zareth added quickly. Quantum lock integration across all warp-capable systems. Approved. Another voice. Autonomous self-destruction protocols for compromised technology. A brief hesitation. Then. Approved. The chamber moved faster now. Not with confidence. But urgency. Decisions stacking on top of each other. Layer after layer of protection. As if complexity alone could stop what was coming. Velta watched silently. Because he already knew. It wouldn't. The projection updated in real time. Security measures deploying. Ships retrofitted. Systems sealed. Warp cores hidden behind layered concealment fields. Quantum locks embedded at the molecular level. Safeguards upon safeguards. Zareth exhaled slowly. This will prevent further exposure. It sounded convincing. Almost reassuring. Though Ren added. Even if they attempt to scan us, they will see nothing. Quindar nodded once. Then we deny them access. A pause. Then. Completely. The chamber agreed. Unanimously. No dissent. No hesitation. Because now. They were afraid. But fear has a pattern. It seeks control. Even when control no longer exists. Velta stepped forward again. Not to interrupt. But to clarify. There is another matter. Quindar looked at him. Speak. Velta adjusted the projection. New footage appeared. Human diplomatic teams. Trade envoys. Observation groups. Moving through Zephyrian stations. Interacting. Observing. Recording. Thorin's expression hardened. When was this recorded? Multiple instances, Velta said. Across different locations. The footage continued. Humans speaking with officials. While others moved in the background. Looking. Measuring. Scanning. Subtle. But deliberate. Zareth leaned forward sharply. They are collecting data during diplomatic contact. Yes. Without authorization. Yes. Another pause. Then. Without restriction. Silence. Because now. Containment wasn't just external. It was already compromised internally. Quindar's voice dropped. End all diplomatic engagement. Though Ren hesitated. That will disrupt trade agreements. End them. Cultural exchanges. End them. A beat. Then. All contact. That word landed heavier than any before it. Because it meant something irreversible. Isolation. Not as strategy. But as defense. Zareth spoke carefully. If we sever contact completely. A pause. We lose visibility. Quindar didn't hesitate. We already have. Silence. Again. Because that was the truth. They weren't watching humans anymore. Humans were watching them. Velta stepped closer. One final adjustment to the projection. A Zephyrian vessel. Fully upgraded. Stealth barriers active. Quantum locks engaged. Completely hidden. Invisible. Secure. At least. In theory. These measures will delay them, Velta said. A pause. Then. But they will not stop them. No one argued. No one disagreed. Because now. They understood. This wasn't prevention. This was resistance. Temporary. Fragile. Inevitable to fail. Though Ren spoke, quieter now. Then what are we actually doing? Velta looked at her. And for the first time. He didn't soften the answer. We are buying time. A pause. Then. The line that shifted everything from strategy. To desperation. We are no longer protecting our technology. Silence. Heavy. Final. We are hiding from them. The projection dimmed. Leaving only darkness in the chamber. Because now. There was nothing left to hide behind. Not confidence. Not superiority. Not control. Only one thing remained. Fear. And the realization that whatever came next. Was already in motion. The orders were executed without delay. Across Zephyrian space, systems vanished from visibility. Ships cloaked themselves behind layered stealth fields. Warp cores sealed beneath quantum locks. Data streams rerouted, encrypted, fragmented. From the outside, they were gone. Hidden. Silent. Safe. At least. That was the intention. 3 days later, Captain Zixara of the exploration vessel Whisper in the Void reviewed her final system report. Every upgrade had been completed. Every safeguard active. Every protocol enforced. Her ship was now one of the most secure vessels in the fleet. Untouchable. Unobservable. Unreachable. She allowed herself a moment of calm. Status, she said. Her systems officer responded immediately. All stealth barriers stable. Quantum locks engaged across primary systems. No external detection signals. Good. Zixara nodded once. Prepare for jump. The engines began to hum. Soft. Controlled. Perfectly aligned. For a moment, everything worked exactly as it should. Then, something didn't. A flicker. Small. Almost insignificant. A fluctuation deep within the warp core. Zixara frowned. Report. A pause. Then, minor instability in harmonic alignment, the engineer replied. Compensating now. Zixara watched the readings. They stabilized. Briefly. Then, spiked. Harder. Sharper. Warning signals lit the control panels. That is not minor, she said, voice tightening. Attempting recalibration. The system cut out. Not gradually. Not safely. Instantly. Silence. Then, alarms. Everywhere. Warp core instability escalating. Containment fields fluctuating. Stealth barriers interfering with internal diagnostics. Zixara stood. Override them. We can't. The response came fast. Panicked. The quantum locks are preventing direct access to the core. Another surge. Stronger this time. The ship shuddered. Lights flickered. Systems desynchronized. Zixara's voice cut through the chaos. Bypass the locks. We don't have authorization. Then get it. We can't reach high command. The communication array is being disrupted by the stealth field. A pause. A realization. Sudden. Sharp. Zixara turned slowly toward the main display. The safeguards. Her voice dropped. Are blocking us. No one responded. Because they didn't need to. It was obvious now. Every system designed to protect the technology was preventing them from saving it. Another surge. Violent. The warp core flared on the internal display. Energy spikes cascading across the system. Zixara's engineer spoke again. But this time, there was no control left in his voice. Cascade failure detected. Silence. Then, estimated containment breach in 6 hours. The number hung in the air. Heavy. Final. Zixara closed her eyes briefly. Not in panic. But in calculation. 6 hours. Not enough to wait. Not enough to fix it internally. Not enough. For protocol. She opened her eyes. Options. No one answered immediately. Because there weren't any. Not ones that followed the rules. Then, quietly, her communications officer spoke. There is one possibility. Zixara turned. Say it. A hesitation. Then, we are within range of human space. Silence. Instant. Absolute. Because that option was worse than the failure itself. Zixara didn't respond. Not right away. Because she already knew what it meant. Exposure. Violation. Consequences. Everything the council had just tried to prevent. Undone. Another surge. Stronger. The ship trembled. Harder this time. Panels flickered. Systems dropped offline. One by one. Zixara looked at the display again. The warp core's condition was degrading faster now. The projection shifted. Showing a spreading chain reaction. Not contained. Not stable. Escalating. Her engineer spoke again. Quieter this time. Captain, if the core breaches at this rate. A pause. Then. It won't just destroy us. Zixara didn't look at him. Explain. The energy release will propagate through local spacetime distortions. Another pause. Then. It could destabilize the surrounding region. Silence. Because that meant something far worse. Not just one ship lost. But a ripple. Uncontrolled. Unpredictable. Expanding. Zixara exhaled slowly. Once. Controlled. Then. Activate distress beacon. The entire bridge froze. Captain. Do it. A pause. Then. Yes, Captain. The system activated. A signal began transmitting. Not just a call for help. But data. Massive amounts of it. System diagnostics. Warp core structure. Energy signatures. Everything needed. For someone to understand the problem. Zixara watched it transmit. Every second. More information leaving the ship. More exposure. More risk. She knew exactly what it meant. If humans received this, they wouldn't just see the failure. They would see everything. Her communications officer spoke again. Signal propagation complete. A pause. Then. Estimated time to reach nearest human vessel. Zixara didn't need to hear it. She already knew. But the officer said it anyway. 4 hours. 4 hours. Less than the time it would take for the core to stabilize. More than enough time. For humans to arrive. Zixara turned back to the main display. The warp core pulsed. Unstable. Dangerous. Dying. She spoke one final time. Quiet. Controlled. But with something new beneath it. Not fear. Not uncertainty. But understanding. Prepare for external assistance. A pause. Then. The line that marked the point of no return. We no longer have a choice. The distress signal continued broadcasting. Unstoppable. Unfiltered. Carrying everything. And somewhere. In human space. Someone was listening. The alarm cut through the lucky strike like a blade. Sharp. Relentless. Unfamiliar. Captain Sarah Chen nearly dropped her coffee as the sound tore through the corridor. Bridge, now, she muttered, already moving. Boots hammered against metal flooring as she pushed through the hatch and slid into her chair. Report. Lieutenant Torres didn't look up from his station. Unknown distress signal, Captain. Source approximately 4 hours out. Signal structure doesn't match anything in our database. Chen pulled the data onto her screen. At first glance, it made no sense. Patterns layered over patterns. Mathematical structures that didn't resolve cleanly. But underneath, something else. That's not just a distress call, she said. Torres nodded. No, A pause. Then, it's a blueprint. That got her attention. Explain. Torres zoomed in. Energy signatures. System layouts. Structural data. Whoever sent this, they're transmitting their entire system architecture. Chen stared at it. Why would anyone do that? Torres didn't answer. Because there was only one reason. Desperation. Minutes later, Dr. Marcus Webb burst onto the bridge, still in grease-stained coveralls. You called. Chen pointed at the display. Tell me what I'm looking at. Webb leaned in. Studied it. Then, his expression changed. Not fear. Not concern. Excitement. Oh, this is beautiful. Chen blinked. Beautiful. Look at this structure, Webb said, already pulling up overlays. This isn't just advanced, it's elegant. A pause. Then. And it's failing. Chen crossed her arms. Can we fix it? Webb grinned. I don't know. A beat. Then. Let's find out. 3 hours later, the lucky strike dropped out of burn. And for the first time, they saw it. The Zephyrian vessel. It didn't look real. Smooth. Seamless. Like it had been grown, not built. Chen exhaled slowly. That's not ours. No, Webb said. A pause. Then. But it will be fun to take apart. Chen shot him a look. We're not taking it apart. Webb didn't respond. Which was not reassuring. Docking was complicated. Different geometry. Different alignment systems. But humans had a solution for everything. Universal adapter should hold, Rodriguez said. Should? Chen asked. Probably. A pause. Then. Okay, yeah, that's not comforting. The airlock opened. And everything changed. The interior of the alien ship was flawless. Every surface glowing. Every structure seamless. No exposed systems. No visible flaws. Kim whispered. It's like walking inside a machine that doesn't make mistakes. Webb smiled. Give it an hour. Commander Zixara met them at the entry. Composed. Controlled. But her eyes gave everything away. Captain Chen, she said. Commander. A brief pause. Then. We appreciate your assistance. However. Her tone sharpened. You must not access our primary systems. Webb stepped forward immediately. We'll need to. Zixara stiffened. That is not permitted. Webb shrugged. Neither is exploding. Chen stepped in. Doctor. She's got a cascade failure, Webb continued. If we don't get into that core, we're all dead in a few hours. Zixara's expression tightened. Our security systems will prevent access. Webb smiled. They always do. Engineering was worse than expected. The warp core pulsed at the center. But it was buried behind layers of shimmering barriers. Untouchable. Protected. Locked. Kim scanned it. Her device immediately sparked. And died. Okay, she said. That's new. Rodriguez stepped closer. Adaptive countermeasures. Webb nodded. Yeah. A pause. Then. I like it. They got to work. Not carefully. Not methodically. But fast. Kim started rebuilding her scanner. From scratch. Using spare parts. And something that looked suspiciously like a heating unit. Zixara watched. Horrified. That device is not calibrated. Nope, Kim said. It is not tested. Not even a little. Then how can you rely on it? Kim didn't look up. We don't. A pause. Then. We just see if it works. Rodriguez mapped the power systems. Or tried to. This doesn't make sense, she muttered. No central generator. Energy's just everywhere. Webb leaned over her shoulder. Distributed system. A grin. Nice. Meanwhile, Patel was building a containment field. Out of parts that definitely did not belong together. Zixara stared. That configuration is unstable. Yeah, Patel said. That's why we added 2 backups. Kim's device powered up. Barely. Lights flickering. Wires exposed. Zixara took a step back. That should not function. Kim smiled. That's what makes it fun. The scan started. At first. Nothing. Then. Data. Streaming. Fast. Clear. Impossible. Kim's eyes widened. I'm in. Webb rushed over. Show me. She pulled up the readings. Warp core structure. Barrier frequencies. Quantum lock signatures. All visible. Zixara froze. That is not possible. Webb didn't even look at her. Yeah, we get that a lot. They worked faster now. Too fast. Zixara couldn't follow half of it. They weren't just analyzing. They were jumping ahead. Making decisions. Changing plans mid-process. At one point. They argued. That won't hold, Rodriguez said. It doesn't need to hold, Webb replied. It just needs to not explode immediately. That is not a strategy. It is today. Then. Something failed. Hard. Kim's device overloaded. Sparks. Smoke. Shut down. Zixara flinched. You see. This is what happens when you ignore proper. Kim restarted it. Immediately. Okay, now we know what not to do. Webb nodded. Progress. Minutes later, they had a new plan. Not to go through the barriers. Not around them. But under. Rodriguez pointed at the floor. We cut through here. Zixara stared at her. That is structural plating. Yeah. You cannot just remove it. Rodriguez picked up a thermal cutter. Watch me. Sparks flew. Metal melted. The ship tried to repair itself, but couldn't keep up. Zixara whispered. This is not how engineering is done. Webb, without looking up. No. A beat. Then. This is how problems get solved. As the floor opened, the core's underside was exposed. Raw. Unprotected. Accessible. Zixara felt it then. The realization. Slow. Terrifying. They hadn't broken her systems. They had simply ignored the rules they were built on. Webb looked at the exposed structure. Smiled. There it is. A pause. Then. Now we can fix it. Zixara watched them. Really watched them. Not just what they were doing, but how. No hesitation. No fear. No attachment to method. Only outcome. And for the first time, she understood something far worse than anything the council had predicted. She spoke quietly, almost to herself. They are not solving the problem. A pause. Watching them already building the next device. Already moving ahead. Already adapting. They are rewriting it. And the most terrifying part. It was working. The exposed core pulsed beneath them. Unstable. Out of sync. Dying. And yet, for the first time since the failure began, it looked understandable. Webb crouched beside the open section, staring into the crystalline structure as data from Kim's rebuilt scanner streamed across his tablet. He didn't speak at first. Didn't move. Just watched. Patterns. Frequencies. Resonance drift. Then, he smiled. It's not broken. Zixara turned sharply. What? Webb pointed at the readings. Your system isn't failing because it's damaged. A pause. Then, it's failing because it's out of tune. Kim leaned in. Like harmonic dezinc. Exactly. Rodriguez crossed her arms. So we just realign the crystals. Zixara stepped forward immediately. You cannot. Any direct interaction will trigger the quantum locks. The system will be destroyed instantly. Webb nodded. Yeah. A beat. Then. So we don't touch it. Silence. Zixara blinked. That is not a solution. Sure it is. Webb stood. Already thinking ahead. Already moving. What do crystals respond to? Kim answered instantly. Frequency. Right. Webb turned. Grinning now. So we don't fix the system. A pause. Then. We teach it how to fix itself. Zixara stared at him. You are suggesting indirect harmonic manipulation of a quantum-locked system. Yep. That would require precision beyond your technological capability. Webb shrugged. Probably. A beat. Then. Good thing we're not aiming for precision. They moved fast. Too fast. Kim began rewiring her scanner, again. Rodriguez rerouted power from 3 separate systems. Patel reinforced the containment field. Everything happening at once. No central plan. Just direction. Zixara watched, stunned. You cannot calibrate that system without full mathematical modeling. Kim didn't look up. We're not calibrating. A pause. Then. We're guessing really well. The device came together. Barely. Wires exposed. Components mismatched. Energy readings unstable. Zixara took another step back. That will not produce a stable frequency output. Webb glanced at it. It doesn't need to be stable. Then what does it need to be? He looked back at the core. Close enough. Kim activated the system. The first pulse hit the core. And nothing happened. Zixara exhaled. As expected. Then. The second pulse. A slight shift. Barely visible. Kim froze. Did you see that? Rodriguez leaned in. Again. Another pulse. This time. Clear. One section of the crystal matrix realigned. Zixara's eyes widened. That is. She stopped. Because there was no word for it. Webb grinned. Working. They pushed harder. More pulses. Different frequencies. Adjustments on the fly. No calculations. Just observation. And reaction. The core began to respond. Slowly. Then faster. Yellow glow fading. Blue returning. Zixara stepped closer despite herself. You are stabilizing it. Not exactly, Webb said. A pause. Then. We're giving it options. Another surge. But this time. It didn't destabilize. It corrected. The system was adapting. Adjusting itself. Learning. Zixara whispered. That is not how it's designed to function. Webb nodded. Yeah. A beat. Then. It is now. Kim's voice rose. We're getting full alignment across sector groups. Rodriguez checked the readings. Power levels stabilizing. Patel added. Containment holding. Zixara stared at the core. The cascade failure. A pause. Then. Has stopped. Silence. But not the same silence as before. This one. Was disbelief. Then. Something else happened. The readings shifted again. Higher. Beyond expected parameters. Rodriguez frowned. Webb. Yeah. Power output is increasing. That's good. No, I mean, beyond normal limits. A pause. Webb checked the data. Then. Smiled wider. Oh, that's really good. Zixara stepped forward. Explain. Webb pointed at the display. Your system was running below optimal resonance. For safety, she said. Yeah. A beat. Then. We removed that limit. Silence. Then. The numbers updated. Efficiency. 132% then. 137% then. Still rising. Zixara's voice dropped. That exceeds maximum design tolerance. Webb shrugged. Design was conservative. It was safe. Yeah. A pause. Then. But not optimal. The core stabilized completely. Not just stable. Perfectly aligned. More efficient than it had ever been. Stronger. Faster. Better. Zixara stared at it. Unable to look away. You didn't just fix it. A pause. Then. You changed it. Webb nodded. Yeah. Another beat. Then. The line that defined everything. We didn't fix your system. Silence. Then. We removed the reason it fails. Zixara felt it then. Fully. Not fear. Not shock. Something deeper. Realization. They hadn't repaired her technology. They had improved it. Understood it. Advanced it. In hours. What had taken her people millennia. They had rewritten. In a single operation. The core pulsed. Bright. Stable. Alive. And no longer limited by the rules it was built on. Zixara spoke quietly. Almost to herself. This should not be possible. Webb looked at her. Not dismissive. Not arrogant. Just. Certain. Yeah. A pause. Then. But it works. And that. Was the problem. For a moment. No one moved. No one spoke. Because what they were looking at. Should not exist. The warp core stood at the center of the chamber. No longer flickering with unstable yellow light. But blazing. A deep, steady blue. Stronger than before. Cleaner. Alive in a way it had never been. Rodriguez broke the silence first. Power output stabilizing. A pause. Her eyes narrowed. No, still climbing. Kim checked her console. Then checked it again. That's not drift. Then what is it? Chen asked. Kim swallowed slightly. It's optimizing. Zixara turned sharply. Explain. Kim hesitated. Because she wasn't entirely sure. The system is adjusting its own resonance patterns. A pause. Then, in real time. Silence. Because that was impossible. Zixara stepped closer to the core. Her voice dropped. That capability does not exist in this model. Webb didn't look concerned. If anything, he looked impressed. It does now. The readings surged again. Efficiency, 141% then. 147% then. Still rising. Zixara's voice tightened. This exceeds structural tolerance. Yeah, Webb said. A beat. Then, let's see how far it goes. The core pulsed. Once. Twice. Then. Stabilized. Perfectly. The numbers locked. Efficiency. 152%. Silence. Absolute. Because that wasn't just improvement. That was transformation. Rodriguez leaned back slowly. We didn't just push it. A pause. Then. We broke its limits. Kim shook her head. No. She stared at the data. Mesmerized. We moved them. Zixara stood motionless. Her eyes fixed on the core. Her voice barely audible. This system was designed to operate within fixed harmonic boundaries. A pause. Then. Those boundaries are gone. Webb finally stepped closer to the display. Calm. Casual. As if none of this was unusual. Not gone. A beat. Then. Flexible. Zixara turned toward him. Slowly. You altered the fundamental behavior of the system. Yeah. Without rewriting its core architecture. Yeah. Without disabling its security protocols. Yeah. A pause. Then. How? Webb thought about it. For a moment. Then shrugged. We didn't fight the system. A beat. We worked with it. That answer didn't make sense. Not to her. Not to any Zephyrian engineer. Because their systems were designed to be controlled. Defined. Restricted. But this was something else. Kim brought up a deeper scan. Her voice shifted. Not excited. Not nervous. Something else. Dr. Webb. Yeah. You need to see this. The display changed. Internal mapping of the crystal matrix. Before. Rigid alignment. Perfect symmetry. After. Subtle variation. Micro adjustments. Continuous fluctuation. Zixara's breath caught. It's changing. Rodriguez frowned. What do you mean changing? Kim zoomed in further. The crystal alignment isn't fixed anymore. A pause. Then. It's adapting. Silence. Because that wasn't an upgrade. That was evolution. Zixara stepped back. Slowly. Our warp cores do not adapt. Her voice trembled. Just slightly. They execute. Webb nodded. Yeah. A beat. Then. That's the problem. Another pulse. The core responded. Not randomly. Not chaotically. But intelligently. Adjusting to internal conditions. Stabilizing before instability could form. Correcting before failure could occur. Zixara whispered. It's learning. No one corrected her. Because no one could. The system logs updated in real time. New patterns forming. New responses recorded. The warp core wasn't just running better. It was becoming better. Chen finally spoke. So what does that mean? Kim answered. Slowly. Carefully. It means this system. A pause. Then. Will never fail the same way twice. That line settled heavily. Because it meant something far beyond this ship. Zixara looked at the core again. Then at Webb. Then back to the data. Her voice was quieter now, but clearer. You didn't repair our technology. A pause. Then, you changed what it is. Webb didn't deny it. Didn't even soften it. He just nodded. Yeah. The alarms were gone. The instability was gone. The threat. Gone. But in its place, something else had appeared. Not a repaired system. Not an improved one. Something new. Something untested. Something uncontrolled. Zixara understood it now. Fully. Completely. And for the first time since the crisis began, she was afraid again. Not of failure. Not of destruction. But of what this meant. She spoke one final time. Soft. But with absolute certainty. This technology. A pause. Then. No longer belongs to us. The core pulsed. Bright. Stable. Evolving. And somewhere far beyond this ship. That change was already beginning to matter. The chamber aboard the Whisper in the void was silent. Not the tense silence of a crisis. Not the focused silence of engineers at work. This was something else. Aftermath. Zixara stood motionless, staring at the warp core. It no longer looked like Zephyrian technology. Not entirely. The structure was the same. The materials were the same. But the behavior was not. It pulsed with quiet confidence. Stable. Adaptive. Alive in a way it had never been before. Behind her, the human team was already moving on. Cleaning up tools. Disconnecting improvised systems. Talking casually. As if what had just happened was routine. Zixara turned slowly. Her voice was calm. But beneath it, something had changed. How long? Webb looked up. For what? For you to understand it. A pause. Webb shrugged slightly. A couple hours, I guess. Silence. Because that answer was unacceptable. Zixara stepped closer. This technology represents over 3,000 years of Zephyrian development. A beat. Entire research institutions have dedicated centuries to refining its stability. Another pause. Then, and you are telling me. Her voice tightened. Just slightly. That you understood it in hours. Webb didn't hesitate. Yeah. That was it. No explanation. No justification. Just certainty. Zixara looked away. Not in dismissal. But because she needed a moment to process something that refused to make sense. 3,000 years. Refinement. Perfection. Control. Undone. In less than a single rotation cycle. Rodriguez leaned against a console, glancing at the core. To be fair, she said, we didn't start from zero. Zixara turned. Explain. Rodriguez gestured toward the exposed systems. You already solved most of the hard problems. A pause. Then. We just didn't stop where you did. That answer hit harder than Webb's. Because it wasn't dismissive. It was worse. It was logical. Zixara's voice dropped. We stopped, for safety. Yeah, Webb said. A beat. Then. We don't. Silence. Because that was the difference. Zixara turned back to the core. Her thoughts moving faster now. Reconstructing. Reframing. Understanding. This wasn't just about speed. It wasn't just about intelligence. It was about limits. Zephyrians designed systems to avoid failure. Humans designed systems to survive it. Zephyrians stopped at stability. Humans pushed past it. Zixara spoke again. Quieter now. We spent millennia perfecting this system. A pause. Then. And you improved it in 4 hours. No one responded. Because there was nothing to say. Behind her, Kim pulled up a final diagnostic report. Core efficiency holding at 152%. No degradation. No instability. She hesitated. Then added. And it's still adjusting. Zixara closed her eyes briefly. Not in denial. Not in frustration. In realization. When she opened them again. The fear had changed. It was no longer about what humans might do. It was about what they had already done. She turned back to Webb. What happens now? A simple question, but one with consequences far beyond this ship. Webb thought about it for a moment, then answered. Honestly. Now. A small shrug. We go home. Zixara stared at him. That's it. Pretty much. A pause. Then. We write up what we learned, share it, see what we can build from it. Silence. Because that was the real danger. Not the repair. Not the improvement. But what came after. Zixara's voice dropped to almost a whisper. You're going to share this? Of course. With your entire civilization. Yeah. Another pause. Then. Why wouldn't we? Zixara didn't answer. Because she couldn't. To her people, knowledge was controlled, protected, restricted. To humans, it was something else entirely. Fuel. She looked back at the core one last time, then at the human team, then at the data still streaming across the system. And in that moment, everything became clear. The Council had been wrong. Not about the threat. About the nature of it. Humans weren't dangerous because they would steal technology. They were dangerous because, once they saw it, they would understand it, improve it, and then share it. Faster than anyone could stop them. Zixara spoke one final time. Quiet, but absolute. We thought we could protect our technology from you. A pause. Then. But that was never the problem. She looked directly at Webb. No fear now. No anger. Just truth. The problem. A beat. Then. Is that you don't need to take it. Silence. Heavy. Final. Because now. There was no misunderstanding left. Humans hadn't just caught up. They had crossed the line. And they had done it. Without even trying to. The first alert came quietly. A soft tone from the sensor array. Almost easy to ignore. Zixara turned. Report. Her systems officer hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second. Then. Multiple contacts entering long-range detection. The display updated. Small signals at first. Distant. Unremarkable. Then. More appeared. Rodriguez glanced over. That's a lot of ships. Chen stepped forward. How many? The officer recalculated. Twice. As if the number might change. 23 confirmed. A pause. Then. And increasing. Zixara's voice tightened. Identify them. Human vessels. Silence. Because that answer meant everything. The projection zoomed out. More signals lighting up the surrounding space. Not military formations. Not attack patterns. Traffic. Cargo haulers. Research ships. Mobile engineering platforms. Salvage crews. All converging. Zixara turned slowly toward Webb. You called them. Webb blinked. I didn't call them. A beat. Then. I mentioned it. Chen gave him a look. To who? Webb shrugged. Couple of channels. Engineering forums. Maybe a research network or two. A pause. Then. Okay, yeah, probably a lot of people. Zixara stared at him. You broadcast this. Well, yeah. A beat. Then. It's interesting. Silence. Because that was the problem. The sensor display updated again. New arrivals. Closer now. Closing fast. Zixara stepped toward the viewport. Ships emerging from warp. One after another. Crude. Uneven. Scarred. But now. She saw them differently. Not primitive. Efficient. Every design carried the same signature. Reinforced. Adaptable. Built to survive. And improve. Behind her, Kim pulled up a live feed. You might want to see this. The screen filled with data streams. Human transmissions. Open. Unencrypted. Zixara's eyes widened. They are sharing it. Rodriguez nodded. Yeah. A pause. Then, all of it. Technical schematics. Warp core data. Harmonic adjustments. Security bypass methods. Everything. Zixara's voice dropped. This is classified technology. Not anymore, Webb said. Another ship dropped out of warp. Then another. Then. More. The space around them was filling. Not with threat. But with curiosity. Human crews were already moving. Docking requests incoming. Data links opening. Conversations starting. Mid-analysis. Zixara listened. Unable to look away. If we shift the resonance pattern here, no, you're missing the feedback loop. What if we combine it with layered containment fields? That would increase efficiency another 10%. They weren't just observing. They were already improving it. In real time. Zixara whispered. They haven't even left. Chen nodded slightly. They don't wait. The projection updated again. New calculations. New designs. Already forming. Already evolving. Kim leaned forward. They're building prototypes. Zixara turned sharply. Already? Yeah. A pause. Then. Some of them are simulating new warp core designs using your tech and ours. Zixara felt it then. Fully. This wasn't a single event. It was a chain reaction. And it had already begun. Webb stepped beside her. Watching the ships arrive. Watching the data flow. He smiled. Not arrogantly. Not triumphantly. Just, excited. This is the best part. Zixara looked at him. What is? He gestured toward the growing fleet. The shared data. The constant communication. When everyone starts building on it. Another pause. Then. That's when things get interesting. Zixara turned back to the display. More ships. More data. More connections. The network was expanding. Faster than she could track. Faster than any system could contain. She spoke quietly. Not to Webb. Not to the crew. To herself. This is not advancement. A pause. Then. This is acceleration. No one corrected her. Because no one could. The final update came moments later. A new projection. Human manufacturing estimates. Production timelines. Kim read it aloud. Projected integration of hybrid warp systems. A pause. Then. 6 months. Silence. Because that number was impossible. Zixara turned slowly. It takes us decades to implement new systems. Webb nodded. Yeah. A beat. Then. We don't wait for perfect. The ships continued arriving. The data continued spreading. The designs continued evolving. And for the first time, Zixara understood the full scope of the threat. Not a species. Not a technology. A process. Unstoppable. She looked out at the growing human fleet. Then spoke. One final time in this phase. We cannot contain this. A pause. Then. Can we? Webb didn't answer right away. He watched the ships. The data. The growth. Then. Quietly. No. And that. Was the truth. No one tried to stop them. Not anymore. Admiral Corin stood on the bridge of the Eternal Judgment, watching the scene unfold in silence. What should have been a controlled rescue operation had become something else entirely. The viewport displayed a field of human vessels. Dozens now. More arriving every minute. Not in formation. Not in discipline. In motion. Ships docking. Undocking. Transferring data. Exchanging ideas. Building. Testing. Failing. And correcting. In real time. Corin's grip tightened behind his back. Status. His tactical officer hesitated. No hostile signatures, Admiral. A pause. Then. But activity levels are increasing. Corin didn't respond. Because hostility was no longer the concern. He turned towards Zixara, who stood beside the central display. Commander. Abit. Report. Zixara didn't look at him immediately. Her gaze remained fixed on the projection. On the warp core data still updating in real time. The whisper in the void is fully operational. Her voice was steady, but different. Warp core efficiency is holding at 152%. A pause. Then, no instability detected. Corin frowned. That exceeds maximum design parameters. Yes, Admiral. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, the human modifications have altered the system's operational limits. Silence. Because that wasn't a repair report. That was something else. Corin stepped closer. Lowered his voice. How much did they access? Zixara finally turned. Met his eyes. And answered without hesitation. Everything. The word settled like impact. Corin exhaled slowly. Controlled. Measured. Then this is a containment failure. Zixara didn't argue. Didn't correct him. Because it was true. But not in the way he thought. She spoke carefully. Admiral, with respect. A pause. Then. Containment was never an option. Corin's expression hardened. Explain. Zixara gestured toward the display. The ships. The data. The network spreading faster than any command could intercept. They are not extracting information. A beat. Then. They are integrating it. Silence. Because that distinction changed everything. Corin turned back to the viewport. Watched another human vessel arrive. Dock. Connect. Then we stop them. The words came automatically. Instinct. Doctrine. Control. But even as he said it, he knew. Zixara answered anyway. How? A pause. No response. Because there was no answer. You couldn't stop something that wasn't centralized. You couldn't block something already shared. You couldn't contain something that grew stronger. Every time you tried. Corin closed his eyes briefly. Then opened them again. Changed. Not defeated. But, recalculating. Then we adapt. The words were quiet. But they carried weight. Zixara studied him. Carefully. To what? Corin looked at the data again. At the modifications. At the impossible efficiency curves. At the human ships. Already building on it. Then he answered. To them. Silence. But not empty. This silence. Held decision. Corin turned fully towards Zixara. Prepare a full transmission to the High Council. A pause. Then. Include everything. Zixara's expression shifted. Slightly. Everything, Admiral. He nodded. Their methods. Their modifications. Their results. A beat. Then. And our conclusions. Zixara understood. Immediately. This was no longer a report of failure. It was something else. A recommendation. What shall I advise regarding future contact? Corin looked out at the human fleet one last time. At the chaos. The speed. The uncontrolled growth. Then. He made the decision that would change everything. Advise immediate establishment of formal technological exchange. A pause. Then. Full cooperation. Zixara didn't question it. Didn't resist. Because she had already reached the same conclusion. Corin spoke again. Quieter now. If we cannot stop them from learning. A pause. Then. We learn with them. Behind them, Webb approached. Holding a tablet. Already full of new schematics. Admiral, he said casually, we've been thinking. Corin turned. About what? Webb held up the display. Hybrid designs. Zephyrian elegance. Human resilience. Combined. If we integrate your adaptive materials with our modular systems. A grin. We could build something really special. Corin studied the data. Longer this time. Then. Slowly. He nodded. Not in surrender. In acceptance. Zixara watched the exchange, then turned back to the viewport. The human ships were still arriving, still building, still sharing. Unstoppable, but no longer unknown. She spoke one final time. Quiet. Certain. The age of Zephyrian technological superiority. A pause. Then. Is over. Corin didn't disagree. He simply added. Good. Zixara looked at him. Surprised. Corin allowed himself the smallest shift in tone. Because what comes next? A pause. Then. Will be greater. The camera pulled back. Human ships. Zephyrian vessels. Side by side. Not equal. Not yet. But connected. And growing. Together.